The casinos aren't closing. That would be too dramatic, too visible, too easy to point at and say, look, Vegas is dying. Instead, they're shrinking, quietly, invisibly, so gradually you don't notice unless you're paying attention. A section of slot machines goes dark, not broken, just off. A restaurant doesn't reopen after renovation. A floor of hotel rooms gets permanently closed, the hallways silent, the doors that never open. The staff gets cut by 15%, and no one sends a press release. This is the Great Vegas Downsize, not collapse contraction, not death-managed decline. The Strip slowly becoming less than it was, property by property, floor by floor, position by position. The buildings stay the same size, the facades still tower over the boulevard, the signs still flash, but what happens inside them gets smaller every quarter. Today I'm showing you the downsize, how Vegas is quietly shrinking itself to match a tourist base that isn't coming back. The casino floors contracting whole sections going dark. The hotel towers going partially offline floors that don't rent anymore. The staff reductions that never make headlines but change everything about the experience. The math of managed decline. What Vegas looks like when it stops trying to grow and starts trying to survive. This isn't speculation. This isn't prediction. This is happening right now in buildings you've walked through, at properties you've stayed at. The shrinkage is real. The downsize is accelerating. If you're new here, I track the slow collapse of the Strip, not the dramatic closures that make national news, the quiet erosion, the shrinkage that happens in spreadsheets and staffing decisions before it shows up in your experience. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, because the downsize is reshaping Vegas right now, and most people won't notice until they're walking through a casino at 2 p.m. wondering why it feels so empty, wondering where the energy went, wondering why everything seems less. By then, it's too late to understand what happened. The shrinking happened while no one was watching. Let me show you what downsizing actually looks like. Not in press releases, not in earnings calls, not in the corporate language designed to obscure what's happening. On the ground, in the buildings, the specific, visible, tangible ways Vegas is making itself smaller while pretending nothing has changed. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you know what to look for, you'll notice it everywhere. The downsize isn't hidden, it's just quiet, and quiet is how Vegas wants it. Start with the casino floor, the heart of the operation, the thing that's supposed to pay for everything else. Walk through any major property on a Wednesday afternoon. Don't look at the people, look at the machines. Count the slot machines that are off. Not broken, not out of service, just off. Screens black, chairs pushed in, the little lights that usually blink dark. Whole sections of the floor sitting silent, the carpet still there, the ceiling still decorated, but the machines powered down because it's not worth the electricity to run games no one's playing. The floor was designed for 3,000 machines. 2,000 are running, maybe less. The gap isn't obvious at first. The operating machines are spread out to fill the space, to maintain the illusion of density. But look closer, count the dark screens. Feel the emptiness between the sounds. The slot floor is shrinking, not by removing machines, by turning them off. The downsize you don't see until you look. Now the table games. Walk through the pit and count the tables that aren't open. Roped off, felts covered with vinyl protectors, chairs stacked. The dealer who would be standing there sent home, position eliminated, shift doesn't exist anymore. The pit that used to run 20 tables is running 12. The craps table that used to have a crowd at midnight sits empty, closed, the dice locked away. The high-limit room, the velvet rope area where serious players used to play through the night, closes at midnight now. The graveyard shift eliminated. The dealers who worked those hours laid off or reassigned. The table games are shrinking, not by removing tables. Tables are expensive, and empty tables look better than empty floor. But the felts stay covered, the chairs stay stacked, the dealers stay home. The downsize in green felt and vinyl covers. The restaurants, walk the casino and count the gates pulled down. The temporarily closed signs that became permanent. The food court that had 8 options now has 5. The steakhouse that served dinner 7 nights now serves 5 closed Monday and Tuesday because no one was coming. The buffets, most of them don't exist anymore. The ones that survived operate reduced hours. The 2 4-hour coffee shop closes at midnight. The room service menu ends at 10 p.m. The hotel towers. This is where the downsize hides best. The floors that don't rent anymore, the wing that stays dark. The rooms taken out of inventory not because they're being renovated, but because it's cheaper to not clean them than to sell them at the rates they'd have to charge. 3,000 rooms in the building, 2,500 available, the rest sitting empty, doors closed, hallways silent, the housekeeping staff that would turn them laid off, the downsize and dark windows and quiet hallways. This is what managed decline looks like. Not a building going dark, a building becoming hollow. The shell stays the same, the facade still impresses tourists driving past on the boulevard, the sign still lights up at night. The entrance still has the fountains or the statues or whatever spectacle announces arrival. But inside, the operation is contracting. Fewer machines running, fewer tables open, fewer restaurants serving, fewer rooms available, fewer staff to run what's left. The downsize is invisible from the outside. That's the point. That's why they can do it without anyone noticing. The building looks the same. The experience is less. But walk through at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday and you can feel it. The emptiness where activity used to be. The darkness where lights used to flash. The silence where noise used to pulse. The sense that something's missing, something you can't quite name but definitely notice. Vegas is shrinking to fit its future. Contracting to match the tourists who actually show up instead of the tourists it dreamed of, and that future is much smaller than its past. The downsize has begun, the hollowing is underway, and it's accelerating every quarter, every month while the facades pretend nothing has changed. The physical downsize is visible if you look. The dark slot sections, the covered table games, the closed restaurants, the hotel floors that don't rent. But the human downsize is where the real damage happens. The staff cuts that hollowed out the operation, the experience destruction that no renovation can fix. The people who made Vegas feel like Vegas gone. Let me show you what the downsize did to the workforce. The layoffs came in waves, not one dramatic announcement that makes the news and then it's over. A continuous bleeding, death by 1,000 cuts. 15% reduction here, 10% there. Voluntary buyouts for anyone who wants to take the package and leave. Positions eliminated, not laid off, eliminated. The job itself deleted from the organization. Attrition not replaced, someone quits, someone retires, and the position just vanishes. The dealers who worked the graveyard shift, gone. The shift doesn't exist anymore. The tables close at 2 a.m. now, and the dealers who used to work 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. find another job. Find another casino. Find another career. The hosts who maintained relationships with the regulars, the Dianas who knew Mrs. Patterson's room preferences and called before every trip, gone. Laid off in waves. The relationships they maintained, deleted with them. The cocktail waitresses who work the slot floor at 3 a.m., gone. The floor closes. The machines turn off. No one to serve drinks to. But here's where it gets worse. The cuts that seem invisible until you're standing in line, until you're waiting for service, until you realize no one's coming. The housekeeping staff that used to turn rooms in 4 hours, reduced, cut by 30% at some properties. Now it takes 8 hours. Now your 3 p.m. check-in means your room might not be ready until 5, until 6, until you're sitting in the lobby wondering what you're paying $400 a night for. The service that made Vegas feel like Vegas disappearing one position at a time. The restaurant servers who knew the menu, who could recommend dishes, who made dining feel like an experience instead of a transaction, replaced with skeleton crews running twice the tables they should. Or replaced entirely with QR codes and tablets. Scan to order. Wait for a runner who's covering 6 sections. The security guards who walked the floors, who knew the regulars, who made the casino feel safe and watched, fewer of them now. Stretched thinner, covering more ground with fewer eyes. The maintenance crews who kept everything working, the lights, the machines, the fountains, the escalators, the air conditioning that fights the desert, smaller crews, longer response times. Things stay broken longer. The valets who used to have your car back in 5 minutes, skeleton crew, 15-minute wait now, 20 on a busy night. The bellhops, the concierge staff, the front desk workers. Cut, cut, cut. Every department leaner, every shift shorter staffed. Every guest interaction stretched thinner because there are fewer people to interact with. Every position eliminated is a piece of the experience eliminated. That's the part the spreadsheets don't capture. That's the cost that doesn't show up in the quarterly report. The downsize isn't just about headcount and labor costs. It's about what guests feel when they walk through the door. And what guests feel now is the absence. The absence of staff, the absence of service, the absence of attention, the absence of the thing that made Vegas feel like Vegas. The downsize cut the people, and the people were the product. The math is simple, brutal, inescapable. Fewer tourists means less revenue. Less revenue means the operation can't sustain itself at current size. The building was designed for 40 million visitors a year. 35 million show up. The gap has to be closed somehow. You can't shrink the building. The square footage is what it is. You can't reduce the mortgage. The debt payments come due whether the casino's full or empty. You can't lower the property taxes. You can't cut the electricity bill for the lights that have to stay on or the air conditioning that has to run. Those are fixed costs. They don't flex. They don't care how many tourists show up. So you shrink what you can shrink, the variable costs, the stuff that scales with the operation, the staff, the hours, the amenities, the inventory. You downsize the operation to fit inside the revenue. You make the experience smaller to match the money coming in. And here's the trap, the doom loop, the spiral that has no bottom. Every downsize makes the experience worse. Longer waits, worse service, fewer options, the sense that something's missing, which drives away more tourists. The ones who notice the decline, the ones who feel the absence, the ones who go home and tell their friends, it's not what it used to be, which reduces revenue further, which forces more downsizing. Cut staff, service suffers. Service suffers, guests don't return. Guests don't return, revenue drops. Revenue drops, cut more staff. The doom loop we've seen at individual properties is now standard operating procedure across the strip, not a crisis response anymore. A business model, manage decline as strategy. Shrink to survive, cut to continue, downsize forever. The spiral has no bottom, no equilibrium, no point where the math stabilizes and Vegas says, okay, this is the right size, we can stop shrinking now. Because every cut changes the equation. Every reduction in staff drives someone away who won't come back. Every hour of service eliminated is an hour someone needed and didn't get. Every dark section of slot machines is a signal that something's wrong. The downsize creates the conditions for more downsize. The shrinking feeds itself. Vegas is downsizing its way into a smaller future, but no one knows how small that future has to be before the shrinking stops. Does it stop at 20% smaller, 30, 50? Some properties might shrink all the way to zero, might downsize themselves out of existence, might cut and cut and cut until there's nothing left to cut and the building goes dark. The math doesn't care about history, the math doesn't care about legacy, the math just says revenue doesn't cover costs, shrink or die. So Vegas shrinks and keeps shrinking and the end point is nowhere in sight. The downsize is happening. That's not speculation, that's not prediction. It's visible in every dark slot section, every closed restaurant, every laid-off dealer, every covered table game. But where does it end? What survives? What does Vegas become when the shrinking finally stops, if it ever stops? Let me show you what the strip looks like on the other side of the downsize. Some properties will make it, not unchanged, nothing survives unchanged, but operational, functioning, still open. The ones with the lowest debt, the best locations, the strongest brands, the operators who cut early enough and deep enough to match revenue to costs before the bleeding killed them. Bellagio survives. The brand is too valuable, the location too prime, the fountains too iconic to let die. MGM won't let Bellagio close. The name alone is worth billions in brand equity. But a smaller Bellagio, fewer restaurants open, reduced hours on everything, staff stretched thin across a building that used to have twice the workforce. The experience diminished even as the name endures. Wynn survives. The luxury positioning protects it. The clientele, the people who can still afford four-figure rooms, still exists. Even if there are fewer of them, the margins can absorb decline better than mid-tier properties. But a Wynn operating at 70% instead of 90%. Closing a tower on slow weeks, quietly reducing what it offers while maintaining the illusion of luxury. The center strip properties survive. Caesars, Venetian, Aria, Cosmo. The locations are too good, the foot traffic too essential, the buildings too central to let go dark. But all of them smaller, all of them leaner, all of them operating versions of themselves that would have seemed unthinkable 5 years ago. The survivors will be smaller, that's guaranteed. Diminished versions of what they were. But here's what no one's saying out loud. Even surviving doesn't mean thriving. Even making it through the downsize doesn't mean returning to what they were. The properties that survive will be permanently reduced. The staff won't come back. The hours won't extend. The amenities won't reopen. Survival means stabilizing at a lower level, not recovering to the old level. And the casualties, the properties that don't make it, they'll be real. The edge properties struggle, the ones north of the cluster, south of the action, anywhere that requires tourists to make a choice instead of stumbling past. The older properties struggle, the ones that needed renovation 10 years ago and never got it, the ones competing against newer buildings with tired rooms and outdated casinos. The properties with debt they can't service struggle most of all. The ones that borrowed against a future that isn't coming, the ones whose mortgage payments exceed what the downsized operation can generate. Some of them won't make it. Some of them will be the next Mirage closed, stripped, demolished, or repurposed into something else. The name going dark, the building sitting empty or transformed into something that isn't a casino at all. We've already seen it start. The Mirage is gone. The Tropicana is gone. More will follow. The downsize doesn't stop at shrinking for some properties. It ends at 0. The survivors will be smaller. The casualties will be real. Dark buildings where casinos used to be. Empty lots where landmarks used to stand. But here's the part that should terrify everyone who cares about Vegas. Even the survivors won't be what they used to be. The downsize doesn't end with right-sized Vegas. It ends with diminished Vegas, reduced Vegas, a strip that's permanently less than it was. And that's the best-case scenario. Picture the strip in 5 years, after the downsize finishes its work, after the survivors stabilize and the casualties close. Fewer properties. The skyline, familiar but with gaps. Dark buildings. Empty lots. Redevelopment projects that haven't broken ground. The names you knew, some of them gone, replaced by nothing. Or replaced by condos, or just vacant. The survivors operating leaner than ever. Restaurants with shorter hours closed by 10 on weeknights. Casino floors with permanent dark sections. Machines that will never turn on again. Hotels that don't rent every room because they don't have the staff to clean them and can't charge enough to justify hiring more. Prices still high, maybe higher, because the remaining properties have to extract maximum revenue from whoever shows up. The downsize doesn't mean deals, it means fewer options charging more. Less competition means more pricing power for whoever survives. A strip that feels different, quieter, less dense, less overwhelming. The constant stimulation that defined Vegas, the noise, the lights, the sense that something was happening everywhere muted now, thinned out, concentrated into smaller pockets while the rest sits dark. Less like the Vegas of legend, more like a regional attraction that used to be something bigger, a destination people remember differently than they experience. The Great Vegas Downsize is happening right now. This quarter, this month, every dark slot machine and closed restaurant and laid-off dealer is part of it. Vegas is shrinking to survive, contracting to match a tourist base that isn't coming back, downsizing the operation because the alternative is collapse. The buildings stay standing, most of them. The lights stay on, some of them. The strip continues to exist. But the Vegas inside those buildings is getting smaller. Less staff, fewer options, reduced hours, diminished experience. The operation thinning every quarter while the facades pretend nothing has changed. This is managed decline. This is what survival looks like when growth is over. This is Vegas learning to be less than it was. The downsize has no end date, no target, no finish line where someone declares, "We're the right size now. We can stop shrinking." Just continuous reduction, continuous contraction. The strip becoming less than it was quarter after quarter, cut after cut, until something stabilizes. Or until something breaks. No one knows which comes first. No one knows how small Vegas has to get before the shrinking stops. No one knows if there's an equilibrium, a sustainable size, or if the doom loop just keeps spiraling until properties start going dark. The downsize is the strategy now. Managed decline is the business model. Shrinking is the plan. And the end of the plan? No one's written that part yet. Hit subscribe to track the downsize. I'm watching the staff cuts, the closed amenities, the dark sections, the reduced hours, every sign that the shrinking is accelerating, and every sign that a property might be approaching zero. Drop a comment. Have you felt the downsize? Noticed the emptiness where activity used to be? Waited longer for service? Seen the dark sections and the closed restaurants and the covered table games? Because the Great Vegas Downsize is reshaping the Strip right now, making it smaller, making it thinner, making it less. The buildings haven't changed. What happens inside them has. The facades still impress, the signs still flash, but behind those facades, Vegas is hollowing out, shrinking to fit a future that's much smaller than its past. The downsize continues, the shrinking accelerates, and no one knows where it ends. I'll see you in the next one.